to World History. So we're doing section 1 today. Go ahead and get your notes out and let's get started. All right, so I'm going to move my bubble up over here. Let's see. Make my circle smaller. Oh, no, we don't want that. No. All right, so bottom corner it is. Sorry, guys. Trying to get myself all situated where I don't block any content that you guys need to see. So, motivations for exploration. Main thing is spices. This is the Moluccas or the Spice Islands. They originally were controlled by Italian and Arab merchants, but several nations wanted to control them. And this is the main factor that leads to exploration. There is some curiosity with it, but it's mostly economic. So Portugal is going to get heavily involved. This is Prince Henry. His navigators will discover a couple of islands off the coast of Portugal, and eventually they'll start expanding into northern Africa and just slowly start taking more and more control as they go across the continent. The big thing to remember is that Portugal is really going to be the leading motivator in this part of the chapter. We'll talk about how they fall from power later on. So, Prince Henry did want to control Africa for a variety of reasons. It was mainly to convert Africans to Christianity, find sources of riches the Muslims controlled, and he'd hoped to find an easier way to reach Asia. He's not going to see that during his lifetime, though. In 1460, Henry will die, and the conquests will continue. In 1488, Bartholomew Diaz will be the first one to round the southern tip of Africa en route to Asia, and be the first one to reach the other side of Africa by going around the Cape of Good Hope. So that was 1488. In 1497, Vasco da Gama of Portugal is also going to do the same thing, leading 4 ships around the Cape of Good Hope. But he wanted to go further. So after 10 months at sea, he reached the spice port of Calicut, which is on the western coast of India. Da Gama will then sell the spices he buys there at enormous profits when he returns back to Portugal, and this confirms Portugal as a major world power. Now, unfortunately, we do have to talk about Columbus. He wanted to reach the East Indies, aka Southeast Asia, and he knew that the Earth was a sphere and that he had to sail west across the Atlantic. He believed that it would only take a couple of weeks to bring him to Eastern Europe. Well, that's not going to be the case, but either way, he started to try and get funding for his voyage. So, Portugal refused to sponsor Columbus's voyage because, he was Italian. So he convinces Ferdinand and Isabella of Spain to sponsor him. They wanted to use this as a way to strengthen Catholicism and bring wealth and prestige to Spain because they just kicked out all the Jews out of Spain, so they lost a lot of wealth doing that. So they needed money. So in August of 1492, Columbus begins sailing west on 3 small ships, the Nina, the Pinta, the Santa Maria. We know this story. They're not going to reach land until October 12th, 1492, at which point Columbus will be convinced he reached the Indies, and he calls the people Indians. He returns home to a hero's welcome, comes to find out that he had discovered, and I'm going to use discovered, previously unknown continents, aka North and South America. By 1493, Ferdinand and Isabella wanted to claim these newfound lands, but other countries were like, no, you can't claim that. So Pope Alexander VI enters the chat and enters a line of demarcation within the Western Hemisphere. Basically, it says Spain gets everything to the west, Portugal everything to the east. At this point, other countries now wanted to prove themselves against Spain and Portugal, and we'll talk about that with the Dutch, the British, and the French this chapter and next chapter. So when it comes to naming the Western Hemisphere, Amerigo Vespucci of Italy wrote a journal on his voyage to Brazil, the major Portuguese colony that they were allowed to keep. And in 1507, a cartographer from Germany, a map maker, used Vespucci's journal and created a map of the Western Hemisphere. He labeled America, and the eventual term Americas was given to the region. The lands that Columbus had discovered became known as the West Indies. We know them today as the Caribbean. So in September of 1519, so this is about 20 plus years after Columbus, Ferdinand Magellan, a native of Portugal, set out with 5 ships, sponsored by King Charles of Spain. By November of 1520, Magellan's ships had entered a bay at the southern tip of South America. Magellan was like, well, let's keep going, and found a passage that later became known as the Strait of Magellan. And then he renamed Balboa's South Sea to the Pacific, which means peaceful. So he technically discovered the Pacific Ocean. After the mission was accomplished, his crew wanted to go home. Think about it, they've been on the water for over a year at this point. Magellan did not. He made the decision to move towards the Philippines, which took another 4 months to get there. So they reached the Philippines in March 1521. Magellan is killed on the Philippines. The survivors returned home to Spain in September 1522, nearly 4 years after they left, as the first people to circumnavigate or sail all the way around the world. But think about it, traveling for 4 years on a boat, going up and down and up and down. No, there's no way I could do that. So that's it for notes for today. Honors kids, you have the Explorers Project to work on. Otherwise, I will see you all next time. Bye, everybody.